Now, what that criticism misses, and also, my dear friends on the left see the title, and I can't really blame them for this, because I understand what they're reacting to. They see the title and they say, oh, creative class, that's elitist. So on the one hand, there's a moral agenda. On the other hand, there's an elitist agenda. But let me tell you what the real agenda is. It's really simple. And what the core message of the book is, and if you open up the book and read it, and a lot of people talk about this stuff without reading the book, or if I can talk about it, the core message is really simple. Every single human being is creative. That's the message. That's the whole point. Every single human being is creative. Now, when we collect the statistics, when we do the numbers, when we have the facts and figures, we look at those people, the fortunate ones of us, who work in the arts and culture, design and music, and even if we're not highly paid, and certainly we're not nearly as highly paid as entrepreneurs and scientists and techies or financial managers, but the point is, we get to use our creativity in our work explicitly. We get paid, or we try to make money, by using our true selves, our true identity, our full capabilities, our creative competence. There are 50 or 60 or 70% of people who stand outside that. The point of the book is they're the key. And the point of Flight of the Creative Class, I talk about this in detail. The real key, and where I think you have such an advantage, and if you ask me, and on Flight of the Creative Class, I talk about this. The places that have a tremendous advantage in understanding this are a few. They're in Scandinavia. They're in Canada, Toronto, the city I live, Montreal and Vancouver, and they're in Australia and New Zealand. The United States, while it has many advantages, has a big disadvantage here. Because in fact, the United States is a class-divided society. If you want to have fun, I don't live in America anymore, so now this has become more interesting to me. Watch our election. This isn't a red and blue map. This isn't a polarization. This isn't a culture war. What you are watching is class conflict. This is a class war. I watched a country I grew up in become split in a class war. Because people who are in the working class and in the service class are looking in and being left further and further and further behind. The real key is that every single human being is creative, and the challenge of our time is to effectively utilize all of that creative energy. The companies that will be the winners, the countries that will be the winners, the regions that will be the winners are not the ones that try to build up the 30 or 35% of the fortunate minority, but the ones who spread that creative economy, who become a creative community and a creative society. When I was in Sweden, I challenged our friends in Sweden. And I give you the same challenge, and I challenged my mayor of Toronto and our premier at this. It's no longer sufficient to just build a high-tech creative economy. It's no longer sufficient to just build an arts-driven cultural economy, though those are important things. We can no longer tolerate the divide. And I challenge you, it's no longer sufficient to just provide material support to those who stand outside the creative economy. Healthcare, social support, housing support are necessary. I wish in my country, the United States, we could achieve those. But they're not sufficient. The real key in creating a public policy, a social system, a social structure for the creative age is to allow each and every individual the ability to self-express and utilize their full talents. That is the engine of our economy. It's not an ethical issue, it's not a moral issue. As we tap that creative energy, as we allow every individual to engage fully, we create the economic power that will drive our societies forward. And let me tell you how I got to this idea. I didn't get to this idea by studying musicians. I didn't get to this idea by studying artists, though we are doing projects, or fashion designers, though we are studying them now. I didn't get to this position by studying high-tech industries. My studies in the 1980s and 90s were on manufacturing industries. And when I studied the rise of Toyota, and when we wrote a book on the Japanese system of manufacturing and its competition with the West, I went and visited every single Toyota plant, every single Nissan plant. We came to Europe, we visited Opel factories and Volkswagen factories and Audi and Mercedes and Saab and all through Asia. What did we learn? The winners in that economic competition, Toyota, which I still consider to be one of the great companies of the creative age, had a very simple formula. I remember interviewing one of the top executives at Toyota who told me this: we will win. We will beat you. And Toyota is now going to be the largest automotive company in the world. We will beat you. The reason is the way you in the West manage, the way you in the West see the world. You think the ideas are in the head of the top CEO, the engineers, and the MBAs, the business people. We know better. The reason we're going to win is because we see every single employee, associate of our company, as the source of intellectual energy. They instituted a system. In Japanese, it's called Kaizen. Continuous improvement doesn't come from the top guy, doesn't come from the engineers. It comes from the factory floor and the supply chain. We will mobilize, Toyota said, and win on the collective knowledge and intelligence of all of our workers. Imagine a town or a community or a society that could do that. You know, this is what Marx was talking about when he wrote about the working class. When he wrote about the working class being a universal group of people, he was right for his time. The creative class, though, is the first universal class. Every single one of us is creative. If we're making open source software or we're making new scientific advances, we're innovating in a factory or on the farm, we all depend on the creative capabilities of one another. We're only as good as the people who come before us, and we're only as good as the teams and communities we build. And then I realized I didn't just learn it from Toyota. I learned it a long time ago from my father. My dad's name was Louis Florida. He was born in 1921 in Newark, New Jersey, the son of Italian immigrants. My dad didn't get to go on and go to university. My dad never traveled outside the United States. Because my dad became a teenager, he turned 13 in the midst of the Great Economic Depression. In the 7th grade, in the McKinley School in Newark, New Jersey, on the day he turned 13, my father put his books down on his desk and he left school, and he went down and got employment papers and took a job in a factory, Victory Optical, making eyeglasses. My dad worked there for a number of years until Pearl Harbor was attacked. He put his tools down on his workbench and he went and enlisted in the U.S. Army. He stormed the beach at Normandy and he fought in every great battle of World War II. He came home after the war and he went right back to work in that very same factory, where he worked till the day he retired, more than 50 years in the same factory. My dad worked his way up. He worked very hard. With no education, he became a manager of a team, a foreman, and he became one of the plant-level supervisors of that factory. Like any young boy, I was fascinated by what my father did. But you know, and I would beg him, Dad, would you take me to work? Dad, can I see where you work? Can we go to the factory? And in the United States at the time, we have this now, but we didn't have take your son or daughter to work day. It just didn't exist back when I was a young boy. So my dad was smart. He said, Rich, you have to study. You have to stay in school. You have to get a better education so you don't have to work in a factory. But I was a persistent little kid. And I would pull out my father's pants leg and say, Dad, please take me to the factory. My father was smarter than me.